All right, we are recording. Again, my name is Scott Smith. I'm basically the technical director and moderator of tonight's webinar. Dr. M and Dr. Chip have joined us. They are hosting you tonight, and they're going to be delivering some fantastic content that I believe you're going to find extremely relevant. You'll notice that if you hover over the screen, you have some navigation there. And all of you are on silent, so we don't hear anything, we don't see anything, but we take your questions through chat or the Q&A box. Doesn't really matter whichever one if you want to just leave a comment, you may want to use the chat box. And if you want to use Q&A, you can drop that in and we get flagged when you have a question. You will have some questions periodically throughout the presentation. And so feel free to leave those in the chat box or in the Q&A. If we don't read them out directly, we will get to every question, we promised. We'll do our best to get to every question tonight. And so I'm going to disappear here in just a second, but we want to make sure that you know how to use everything that you see. You've got your window there. You should be able to see the docs, and of course, the big purple screen, the Mladenoff Clinic, your optimal health strategy during COVID-19, how to raise and rebuild immunity. Mike says, hello, Dr. Chip, Dr. M. You guys keep me healthy. I think a lot of people probably have that sentiment. So that's a good thing. Guys, these are desperate days. These are interesting times. A lot of people are confused. Hopefully you're going to have some good clarity tonight that's going to help you directly. And hopefully you'll also have some takeaways as well that you can share with loved ones. And so we've got a great show rate here tonight. Thank you everybody for showing up. Again, I'm going to duck out here, but we want to welcome Dr. Chip and Dr. M tonight. Hello, Denise from Pittsburgh. You guys use the chat box, please, and the Q&A tonight. Let us know your questions. Get ready for some great content. Dr. M, take it away, sir.
Hey, thank you. Hey, Dr. Chip. We're going to rock and roll. So one of the things that I like to do, first of all, we got people from all over the place. We invited Dr. Diana's patients from Arizona. So we've got some people from Arizona, and then our patients, of course, the majority of patients are from the Kansas and Missouri area. But what I like to do when I do a seminar with docs is set the tone. And the tone simply is that, okay, yeah, what's your intention of what you want to get out of what we're presenting tonight? And so I just want to read this quote that kind of sets the tone for where we're going to go. And simply, St. Augustine said, God bestows more consideration on the purity of the intention with which our actions are performed than on the actions themselves. So I want to be clear about a couple of things, and that is most of the information we've seen presented by clinicians and the pundits on TV, on the airwaves, they've never treated a COVID-19 patient. They've never diagnosed a COVID-19 patient or a SARS-23 or the COVID-1 virus patient. And I want to be upfront, Dr. Chip and I have never treated or examined or diagnosed a COVID-19 patient or a SARS-CoV-1 patient. And so we're going to set that tone. If you're looking for treatment for COVID-19, you're not going to get that tonight. Some of the resources we're going to use are from the Internet Book of Critical Care. Now, we're going to be sending a bunch of stuff by you, so I don't want you taking any notes, and we'll tell you how you're going to handle it. But the purpose of what we're going to do is not a treatment and diagnosis recommendation for the COVID-19, but we want to focus on, number one, how does your immune system work? How do you get an infection in the first place? And then how do you repair, strengthen your immune system before or after you get an infection? So the way you're going to get all the information and all the references we're going to use is if you simply take that object in your hand, your cell phone, if you're not using it to watch us, you're going to type all one word, fix immune, and send that to 555-888. And it's going to ask you to leave your first name, last name, and your phone number. Then there's going to be about a 30-minute delay, and you'll start getting the first, okay, here is the reference for CDC or whatever it might be. So again, text fix immune, all one word, to 555-888.
All right, so first thing we're going to do is look at symptoms of coronavirus. So when you call in, Sandy's probably going to ask you, do you have a fever? Do you have cough? Do you have shortness of breath? Those are the three big things that we're looking at that we're not going to treat. And so we'll give you resources from that point. If you don't have any of those, you can give us a call and we'll figure out how to get you in. Biggest thing at stopping the spread is avoiding contact with people who are sick, coughing or sneezing into a tissue and then tossing it right away. Avoiding touching your hands, nose, eyes and mouth, disinfecting and cleaning touch surfaces, stay at home when you're sick, except to get medical care, and then wash your hands often with at least 20 seconds of soap and water. The other thing we're looking at here is coronavirus has fever, chest pains, chills, rapid heartbeat, breathing difficulties, pneumonia, and possible kidney failure. The spread is through coughing and sneezing and droplets. You could have a headache, soreness, short of breath, any of those. Right, so Dr. M, is there anything you'd like to add with those pandemics?
Well, I want to put this into perspective. And so we've got this chart. This is sent from mphoneline.org, and just a little bit of historical background. What were the worst pandemics in the world history? Well, the number one was the Black Death, or the bubonic plague, that happened in the 1500s, where 60% of Europe's population was killed. So an estimated 75 to 200 million people died from this plague. In 1918, the Spanish flu, approximately 15 people died. This is probably a running total, but the HIV/AIDS epidemic, 25 million people died. The Justinian plague, 25 million people. The Antonine plague, some of these you may not have even heard, but just to give you a reference point, Dr. Chip, what's the current death total for the world? Do you have that handy? Just on.
I have the United States total here. John Hopkins today said that we have 79,785 confirmed cases with only 1,124 deaths.
Okay, what about Kansas? Yeah.
The state of Kansas has 168 total positive cases. There's 3 deaths in those 168. And then we have 2,869 negative cases. So people who have been tested and are tested negative.
Okay, so you can see the ratio of people that have been affected by this compared to these, the worst pandemics in the world, right? So now, Dr. Chip, give us a couple other statistics here about this particular epidemic.
So the majority of these infections are mild, as you can see on the left side of your screen here. You can have some critical, but 80% are those mild cases. Those most at risk are age 60 and above, with 80 and above being the worst. You have existing conditions, so if you have cardiovascular disease, you're at a higher risk. Diabetes, you're at a higher risk. If you have no existing conditions, you are at an extremely low risk. And then the more complicating factors you have, obviously on the right of the screen, the worse that the conditions could get. How contagious and deadly is it? As you can see on the left side of your screen, the transmission is about 1.5 to 3.5 with a fatality rate of about 0.7 to 3.4. The numbers I just gave you were the US has a 1.4% and Kansas has a 1.7%. The incubation period is, it says here 2 to 7 days is the typical, up to 14 is going to be that normal. That's why we're having the 14-day quarantine period. Obviously, we're trying to flatten the curve with that 14-day period. As you can see with the low fatality rate with protective measures, that's what we're going to try to do. The coronavirus infection trajectory, that's about what we're seeing on the right side of the screen there. You can see USA is about halfway. Obviously, there's more now. This is just a day or two old, and that's how quickly things are changing.
All right, so one of the things that is really important is like, okay, if you look on the right-hand side, the HIV epidemic, there was only 69.5 million mentions in the media. The SARS, 66.3 million. The COVID-19, 2.1 billion mentions of the media. That's not even you talking to your neighbor or you talking to me when you come in or calling me and asking me a question. This number gets astronomical after a while. We're going to address some of what that may be doing to you. So we created this graphic to basically show what I think is we've been asking the wrong question. We've been asking, okay, how does this thing spread? Well, more importantly, the question is, how does anybody get any kind of infection? And so we're going to go through this in detail. But what I wanted to discuss with you first is, you've probably heard, oh, doc, you got to use this product to support the immune system. Doc, you got to use this. I hear it's going to help you get over an infection. Doc, you should try this. And so the question I have when a patient says that to me is like, okay, which part of the immune system are you referring to?
And so you can see here the two things circled, the thymus and the bone marrow, are the two primary portions of the immune system that we're trying to help. However, the adenoids, tonsils, lymph nodes, spleen, the GI is one of the biggest ones. We're going to try to support all those and not just one or the other. So there are two parts of the human immune system, the innate immune system and the adaptive, and that's what we're going to go over next.
All right, so now in your immune system, the innate is what's called the inborn part of your immune system, and it's very nonspecific. The adaptive is what we acquire, and it's very specific, and you produce things that are called Th1 and Th2. Those are thymus helper cells 1 and 2. Now, we're not going to go ballistic neurochemistry on you here, but we need to give you a little bit of background on some of this information. And so here's an important thing, is that the innate immune system is our body's initial response to eliminate microbes and infection. This should happen immediately or within hours. It does not matter what kind of organism it is. So it's like autopilot, boom, you get something, the innate immune system responds. And so then our response here is nonspecific, so you get a series of things that happen that are just generic, like a machine gun approach where your body's just gonna friend or foe, and it doesn't ask and it just starts firing. Whereas the adaptive system is going to be a lot more selective. So the innate immune system recognizes self and non-self. And so you can start to imagine now, it's like, okay, is that how autoimmune disorders happen? And the answer is yes. Your body doesn't know the difference between itself and a foreign invader. So autoimmune disorders are partially initiated by your body doesn't know yourself from not self.
So now on the right side of your screen, when you see the adaptive or the acquired, we're looking at the very specific response. So the Th1 cells are cellular and they produce phagocytosis. And then the Th2 is humoral, which creates those antibodies. And so what we're looking at is each thing needs to happen in perfect order for you not to get something. On this side of the curve here, if you have too much of one or the other, that is when you can get autoimmune disease.
All right, so it takes 5 to 7 days after encountering a new antigen for the adaptive immune system to reach full activity. So a cold lasts about how long? Everybody, let's say it together, about 7 to 10 days, right? And this is your natural body's response of how this happens.
And so now we're looking at the 4 pathways for T cell adaptive immunity. So at the center of your screen, you start with a naive T cell, which it doesn't know which way it wants to go. It's going to happen based on what's going on. So you can have your Th1, Th17, your Treg cells, or your Th2 cells. So here is the cytokines, the direct immune response. You have your Th1 response, which is interleukin 12, living things, bacteria, viruses, fungi, or you have your Th2 responses for IL-4, interleukin 4. You have your non-living things, parasites, foods, pollens, bad fats, and heavy metals. And so obviously the circles here are showing us that not one thing happens all the time. You can have naive in Th1, naive in Th2, naive in Th17. It all depends on what your body's encountering. And so here we're seeing the Th1 is the cell-mediated immunity, the phagocytosis. The Th1 is going to go and basically eat up everything it's not supposed to have. You have intercellular immunity, which are bacteria, fungi, and viruses. And then you have inflammation. So someone with autoimmunity has a high Th1. You have your Th2 antibody-mediated immunity, which has B cells produce antibodies, IgG, IgE, foods, parasites, and extracellular immunity.
So when someone tells you this is good for the immune system, you should be asking, okay, which part of the immune system? Now, we've got a lot more stuff prepared here, but I'm going to just kind of blow by this because we could probably spend all night talking about just what we talked about so far. So I want to give you something from a friend of mine, Dr. Sam Yannick from the University of North Carolina School of Medicine, and he says that there's no such thing as immune support. So what part of the immune system are we talking about supporting? So nutrients that support the immune system are best determined by your individual needs. We're going to tell you how you can support that and figure some of that stuff out. But the point is that supporting the wrong part of your immune system could create more problems than it can help. So which part of the immune system are we going to talk about in terms of helping?
And so we're going to ask the question, do you have lowered immune function, increased immune function, or a combination of both?
All right, so now here's an important factor. The COVID-19 virus increases something called CRP, or C-reactive protein. Now, you've probably heard about this a lot because this is elevated in arthritis. And probably a decade ago, this was a new wave. Okay, we got a blood test that tells us about inflammation and arthritis. And this is an indicator of how severe the disease of COVID-19 will be and how the prognosis is going to be. Now, interestingly, if you have a severe respiratory failure and a normal CRP blood test, then it's probably not COVID, it's probably heart failure. But here's the important thing. We see patients with concussion. We saw one this morning. Elevated CRP is the number one indicator that tell you how quickly the patient will get better or how serious their problem would be. So we're talking about plain old inflammation here. So this C-reactive protein produces these fancy names like interleukin-6, interleukin-1 beta, and tumor necrosis factor alpha. And the reason why we're going over this in detail is if you sprain your ankle, you got these three things happening. If you get a concussion, you got these three things happening. If you get coronavirus 19, you got these three things happening. And so the condition of your body before you get exposed to the organism is also going to determine how fast you will get infected and how your body can and cannot perform. So there's five things that happen in order for you to get infection. Well, all you've heard about in the media is that yellow thing, exposure to the organism. Well, mosquitoes don't grow in a swamp. Mosquitoes grow in a swamp. They don't grow in the ocean or in a pure glass of water. So you got to have a suitable environment. And if your immune system is compromised, you can't fight. And now you know there's two parts to your immune system. Well, if your stress system doesn't work properly, then it's going to call for help. Where does it call for help? From your immune system. And then finally, we've got what I call genetic tyranny or genetic blessings. And we'll talk a little bit about that. But the bottom line is, do you want to wait for some predetermined condition to hit you? And then you say, oh, my mother had it, my grandmother had it, that's why I'm going to get it. So I'm going to die of ABC, whatever it might be. All right. So Dr. Chip, if you can just walk us through a couple of things quickly on infectious stuff.
And so you can see here, there is a lot of information on this page. The big thing is we're just trying to break the chain. Whether it be washing your hands, obviously not coughing on people, that's going to be the nicest thing. It's basically staying clean, right? So that's going to be the biggest thing. On the next slide, you'll see the CDC guidelines for if you need an antibiotic for future things. Obviously, COVID-19 is a virus, but this is going to be the CDC guideline. And then on the next slide, we are now talking about antibiotic resistant issues. With Italy, they've been prescribed a lot of antibiotics, and so now they're getting essentially superbugs. So we'll send you these three links so that you can look over all of it, because that's a lot of information for the short time we have tonight.
I think we also might have posted them early last week on our Facebook page, but no problem. If you send that Fix Immune to 555-888, we'll blast all this stuff off to you. All right, so now let's go back. Step number one, if you're stressed out, heading for burnout, if your stress system breaks down, making cortisol suppresses your immune system. So I want to show you a couple of pictures. This is the rage reaction. So when you're under stress, the first thing you do is you fight or you turn around and run like heck. Well, if your stress continues, then what happens? Okay, so you see the yellow one is the fight or flight. The red one on your left is if the stress continues, then you'll freeze. And then if stress continues long enough, you'll faint. And you see on the right side is the green, cool, kind of casual, calm, rested guy. So in one of our tests that I know some of our listeners and viewers have had, when we attach those battery cables to your wrists, and we do that. You see that pie chart with the 3 colors of the pie? It tells you where you are with these 3 pieces of the pie. So obviously you want to have more of the green, less of the red, and maybe a little bit of the yellow. So when we talk about that test in a bit, you'll see what that thing does.
So one of the first things that you have to have is a compromised immune system. With your stress levels higher, with everything that's going on with the quarantine, with everything, that's putting a stress on every single person. So what we're going to try to do is give you some ways to help decrease that so you don't get that compromised immune system. On the next slide, you'll see the suitable environment. Everything needs that suitable environment. For you to be able to grow plants, you got to have the good environment. For you to get exposed to something, you can see here the toxic exposures. We're exposed to these all day, every day. So we're going to try to help your immune system every day, not just in this time of need.
So again, they're not talking about this in the media. They're just talking about how to not get the bug. And you see, it's a little more complex than that. Right. So the next area is that, okay, you have to be exposed to the organism. And of course, there's like an avalanche of information that we're all buried with. So that's why we're covering all the other stuff. And then this last area is, I call it genetic tyranny or blessings. And that is, you have the choice. Do you wait because your mother had it, your grandmother had it, and your great-grandmother had it, so I'm going to be blessed with this curse and that's what I'm going to die of? Or do you do something different? And that's the new term that's been coined by Bruce Lipton, if you've ever heard of him, called epigenetics. And simply what that means is functioning above your genes, because you can make your genes be manifested or not be manifested by doing different things. And we'll talk about some of those things briefly, but give you a bunch of references that you can follow up with. All right, so now here's the big thing. Okay, so we race through that. We're going to give you a page that will send you those 5 things, and there's a bunch of videos on each one of those stages of the 5 things that have to happen in order for you to get an infection. But now, okay, how can you go to hand-to-hand combat to be prepared to fight off an infection? Or, you've had the cold, you had the flu. We all know people that, okay, they get the cold, they get a flu, and it's like they're barely over that, and they get something else. And then they get over that, and then they get something else again. Like it seems like they're always sick. And there's other people, it's like, okay, I'm going to brag on Dr. Chip. He played college hockey. He's only been on antibiotics for 7 days in his entire life, and he's like 23 now. 33 actually. So how, did that happen by accident, or did that happen because specific things were done? And the same thing with his 2 sisters. They'd never been on an antibiotic in their life. Now here's the deal. You're entitled to your own opinion, but you're not entitled to your own facts. So is it possible to live without antibiotics? And the answer is yes, but you don't do it by just laying there and doing nothing. You have to be proactive and do stuff in order to do that. All right, so let's go on, and we're going to now talk about the 6 steps of how you'd actually repair your immune system.
So the first thing is we have to restore neurologic command. So if you look there in the center, that's what we're going to start with. So that's going to be maximizing the innate intelligence, or what you were born with. On the next slide, Dr. M, do we have anything about those pandemics in chiropractic?
Well, here's the curious thing. History is always a reflection of what did and did not work. So I'm going to give you some stats on what happened with the Spanish flu in 1918. So this is in the medical record, the historical record in the Library of Congress. So in Iowa, 50 MDs treated 4,953 cases. There was 274 deaths. 150 chiropractors treated 1,635 cases, and there was 1 death. Now they came to the chiropractor because of the flu. In Iowa, excluding the Davenport stats, again, this is 1918 swine flu, the MDs treated 93,590 patients with over 6,000 deaths. So that's a death rate of, okay, I can't read my slide there, 1 in 15. Okay, the chiropractors treated 4,735 patients with 1 death. That's one death in 789 patients. Across the country, 1,142 chiropractors treated 46,000 plus patients for the flu during the 1918 epidemic. The death rate was 1 in 886. And again, the patients were going to the chiropractor for the flu, not for neck ache, headache, low back pain, or knee pain. New York City, 900. So again, these are statistics. 950 out of 10,000 cases treated medically died. 6,400 out of 10,000 patients with pneumonia that were medically treated died during the flu epidemic in New York City. So these are some pretty powerful statistics. So the same epidemic, Oklahoma chiropractors, only 7 deaths and 3,500 patients approximately. Chiropractors were called in Oklahoma in 233 cases where the MDs treated the patients and they said, we don't know what to do, go home and die. The chiropractors saved all of them but 25. So here is some statistic. Now this is posted on our website. Okay, so again, you're entitled to your own opinion, but not your own facts. So when you adjust the top 3 vertebrae that you see in green, you can increase these T helper cells from your immune system. If you adjust the upper part of the back, it decreases some of those inflammatory chemicals with the weird names like interleukin and cytokines. If you adjust the upper part of the neck again, this was a patient with an acute kidney problem that decreased the inflammation in the kidney. Upper middle back, it makes and decreases. Remember those weird chemicals we talked about, the tumor necrosis factor alpha, the interleukin 2 and the interleukin 1 beta. Within 2 hours of getting adjusted, these things decrease. Now this is not 1918 statistics, this is 2006, all right? 2013, a 16-month-old infant with bilateral ear infections. They received some cranial therapy and some spinal adjusting in 4 weeks, and the ear infections were resolved. 1 month of care for exacerbations of asthma helped promote sleep through the night and decrease the amount of inhaler that was needed. This manual lymph pump technique was used, and it increased the good guys. So now, those patients that come in, when you see Dr. Chip and I doing the test where we hold your arm over your head and then we test your leg, right? And then we do some work on your chest area right in here. This is exactly what we're doing, is this lymphatic pump to help your immune system and to help your garbage drainage system, which is what your lymphatic system is. Here's a study, 2016, reduction of fever, musculoskeletal symptoms within 1 hour of getting an adjustment. White blood cells improve function within 15 minutes of an adjustment. Chiropractic care helps immune deficient 5-year-old female with recurrent respiratory. This was published in 2018. These are the patients that Dr. Diana is seeing in her pediatric practice. Chronic ear infections with failed inner tube surgery. So even after they had the ear tube surgery that was supposed to help them, they still get the ear infections and they're still helped by chiropractic care. A spinal manipulation has a priming effect on the entire immune system. This interleukin 2 induced, and you've heard these words, the IgG and IgM, parts of that adaptive immune system. It helped improve the production of these chemicals to help your immune system fight better. One spinal manipulation increases the good guys in 20 minutes, and it can last for 2 hours. Spinal manipulation twice a week increases these hormones of the adaptive system that help us fight better.
Now we have to look at something that you've never heard me or Dr. M talk about, and that is decreasing your cortisol and lower your stress. So we use the I Stressed Out daily. I know I use it personally daily. Getting 8 hours of sleep.
He has to put up with me. That's why Dr. Chip takes it.
Yeah, that's right. But so getting 8 hours of sleep will help. Meditating, praying, purposeful movement like Qigong or yoga, passive exercises. Right now, we don't want to be doing a lot of high interval training. We want to avoid decreasing stimulants like caffeine, nicotine, carbs, and alcohol, especially while you're sitting at home. And then looking at social interaction. That's the hardest part. We thank you guys for all being here tonight. We know that it is taking time out of your family time, so thank you. And it's part of our social interaction for the night as well.
Okay, so we're going to take a pause here. I want everybody to just close their eyes. You're going to take a big, deep breath in, hold your breath, fill up your lungs, okay? And I want you to think positive thoughts, envision your neighbors, your friends, family, getting together with them, envision the people in America who need our help, envision them getting better, feeling better, getting back to work, envision our politicians getting wisdom. I think we'll need more than all of us to do that. But yeah, if we start envisioning positive things to happen, guess what? They're surely to start happening. And the best important part for me is it doesn't cost us anything to think like this. What harm will it do to think like this, to ask for guidance and to help our fellow man just by thinking that they're going to be better? So thanks for that break. we're going to plow on ahead here. Again, we're blowing by some stuff pretty quick. We're going to send you all the follow-up information, okay? So just text Fix Immune, all one word, to 555-888. Right now, the third thing is we need some target-specific nutrients. Okay, so now, wait a minute, Dr. M, you just said that the first thing I should ask you is, okay, which part of the immune system are we going to use target-specific nutrients for? So there's two things that need to happen here. The first is, okay, if you have the cold or the flu right now, there are some specific things you can do just for that organism. So Dr. Chip, if you could give us a couple of those things.
So the first thing is going to be zinc. It's effective in treating acute lower respiratory tract infection and decreasing the incidence of infections in the elderly. The next part on the next slide, you'll see it's also decreasing the morbidity of lower respiratory tract by limiting the viral replication and decreasing the duration and severity of the viral infection, basically shortening your cold. Zinc also reduces the duration and severity of the common cold symptoms when administered within 24 hours of onset of common cold symptoms. Next thing is going to be selenium deficiency associated with increased viral load, associated with increased viral strength, and has been suggested to play a role in the emergency of novel viral diseases. A viral infection leading to lung pathology complications are more common in those who are selenium deficient, probably due to the impaired glutathione peroxidase production and increased lung tissue inflammation and inflammatory responses to viral infection. We use a product called Serinac for that, or N-acetylcysteine. It's a free radical scavenger, and I think we're going to talk about it here in just a little bit. The next part is going to be reducing inflammation and detoxifying. Biggest part of that is, if you, my uncle always says, we're going to detox before we retox. So if you don't have any toxifying agents, so alcohol, bad foods, anything that's inflammatory in nature, you're already ahead of the game. So if we can detox, whether it be a sauna, exercise, anything like that, water is going to help you detoxify. That all is putting you ahead of the game.
We're going to talk about some of those in a little more detail in just a little bit, but I want to just take you down the rabbit hole. So when Alice goes down the rabbit hole, what does the queen say? She says, off with her head, off with her head, off with her head. And then what else does the queen say a little bit later on? She says, well, my dear, here we must run as fast as we can just to stay in place. And if you wish to go anywhere, you must run twice as fast as that. So let me get this straight. If I run fast, I don't go anywhere. And if I run twice as fast, I don't go anywhere twice as fast. So, okay, Dr. M, what are you talking about here? So if you have spent the time away from work, glued to the TV, listening to the stats and all the spewing of information on the COVID-19 virus, guess what? Whatever your goals are in life, you just toss them away. So here's what I'm suggesting to you, and that is, whatever your goals are in life, it might be, okay, I want to go back to work in the next 2 weeks. I want to make sure, and this is Miss Sandy, is like, okay, our youngest daughter has a wedding. We've been planning this wedding, and it's like we're sitting here on pins and needles, and we got contingency plans, but it's like our goal and objective is focusing on, okay, the wedding is going to happen. We're going to be joyous in our daughter's wedding. But you know what? If you look down the rabbit hole and you cut off your head and you pay attention to all this stats and all this stuff about the disease, guess what? You do lose sight of the prize. So if any of you grew up in the north like I did, during a snow blizzard, if you're like, I'm at the office now, we're doing this thing, right? If there's a snow blizzard that hit and I had to go home, it's only 2 miles, but you know what? If the snow was so bad and I couldn't see 2 feet in front of me, sometimes you have to get on your hands and knees to find the white line in the middle of the road so you can find your path home. That's how bad a snow blizzard could be. And that's what I'm talking about here. It's like, okay, whatever your goals are in life, it's like, okay, keep focused on those goals. And I don't say ignore all this other stuff, but that's partly why we're doing this tonight, is like to try and give you a little bit of focus, a few resources where you can just, click on this link, and then, once every couple of days, it'll be updated and you can kind of see what's going on, right? Instead of being pounded, off with your head, so I can put more COVID-19 stuff in your head. So let's take a deep breath and keep focused on your goals.
All right. So again, now talking about reducing inflammation, detoxifying, and the mental aspect. Dr. M, is there a mental aspect to this?
Oh boy, there sure is. And now, okay, we'll come back to that, but I want to talk about the chemical aspect because I love chemistry. So here's what happens when you bang your knee. And so this is an inflammatory response. So look over on your left. I'm going to use my mouse around that middle box called activation of NF-kappa beta. And you can see that happens for lots of reasons. Then you make all these weird names, and then you get the stuff in gray called interleukin 6, interleukin 1. Those are the bad guys. Okay, so let me give you a perspective here. That activation of NF-kappa beta, the drug industry is spending over 200 billion with a B dollars to figure out how to stop that thing from creating all this other problems. The first person that does, guess what? Gets the prize. So notice that first one right there, interleukin 6, we talked about the COVID-19 virus. If you got that high in your body, you don't have a good outcome with COVID-19. If you have a concussion and you have high interleukin 6, you don't have a short recovery. If you have a twisted knee, like we had a patient come in this afternoon, and you have a high interleukin 6, high inflammation, guess what? It's going to take longer for you to get better. So you know what? We better pay attention to the inflammation in your whole body, because it will throw gasoline on the fire once you're exposed to anything. Right, so those are the big things that we want to try and stop, and that's why the I6 was formulated to deal with not just those 4 things, but 2 of the other things in that gray panel box where we have the 3 X's right there. Right, so here are some of the nutrients you can use specifically for that interleukin 6. Again, that zinc does that, skullcap, you've heard of some of these, berberine, andrograph, okay, but the I6 factor deals with that stuff. So to reduce inflammation, we're going to take some ice. Okay, let's back up. If I can go back one slide. Okay, so there are 9 chemicals that produce this inflammation with all those weird names. Okay, so the I6 factor takes care of 6 of those. Stress is one of those. So with the I6 factor and the I stressed out, you're taking care of 7 of those 9 hormones. Now, if you're taking a good fat, you now have 8 of those 9 hormones handled. Okay, and then the last one is, most people typically don't have this, but if you have burning pain, if it feels like, doc, you know, I got that sciatic I had a couple of years ago, but it's burning now, it doesn't hurt, it burns all the time. Okay, then that's lactic acid. That's a whole nother chemical pathway that needs to be addressed, but very few people have that, including high performance athletes. So take I6 factor and I stressed out. You need to eat something every day. So Dr. Chip, Dr. Dan, and myself, we made a book. I'm going to hold it up here. I don't know if my camera will show it. It's a small, there we go, a small little book like that. It's 40 pages. It's not very thick, right? So it gives you things you can do at home, give some dietary recommendations. Now, some of you know an anti-inflammatory diet under a lot bigger things like the Atkins diet, the paleo diet, the keto diet, the South Beach diet. They're all kind of the same. So this is a lot scaled down version. There isn't even a meal plan. It just says, okay, eat these foods. They're not inflammatory. Don't eat these foods. They're inflammatory, but also, household products. These things can make you inflammatory. So, when you come by the clinic, we got some of these. It's our gift to you. We'd be happy to have you have them and partake in getting your body being anti-inflammatory. Now back to what Dr. Chip was saying. Here's one of the things I don't understand. I hate Missouri Tigers. Well, why do you hate? I have a cycling buddy who's like that. He says, I hate Missouri Tigers. I said, why? He says, well, I went to KU. I said, well, what did anybody from Missouri ever do to you? Nothing, but I still hate them. I said, well, why? And he couldn't give me a reason why, but he had just bought into that culture, was like, okay, wait a minute. They're a rival, but that doesn't mean you have to spew venom and hate them. And it's like, I could never understand this. I grew up in Canada. We didn't have this college rivalry like we do in the US that my kids have now. But it's like, okay, you need to get rid of those inflammatory thoughts. It's like, okay, you can still, the Chiefs, when I was on staff with them, had a great coach named Al Saunders. This guy was nice, relaxed, calm, but when he crossed the white line to go onto the field to play for practice or for a game, he went from 0 to 1 million intensity. And he was so intense and so focused and attention to details. And then when the game was over, he walked across the white line. He forgot everything. And people go up to him and say, well, what should I have done to that? He says, no, We're done. We can't change it now when we review the game film and everything. So he was a master at turning it on and off, and you need to become a master at that too. You need to get rid of those anti-inflammatory thoughts. You know, we can pick our friends and not our family. Well, truth be known, that's one of the reasons why we moved to Kansas, because my lovely family. There's lots of other reasons too, but it's like, okay, please scale it down with the inflammatory rhetoric and thoughts for like no reason at all. Then we need to do some passive exercise, intentional stuff like yoga, like Qigong. You need to get at least 8 hours of sleep. You should meditate. You should pray. I call prayer and meditation excluded. Those are purposeful movement. There's a purpose and intention of the movements. It's not to get your heart rate sped up, okay? And then there's something that we do in the office. Again, the patients that have been here, and we're happy to do this for our existing patients and anybody else that would like to come in and have this test on the house, okay? We attach 2 clamps to. They look like battery boosting cables. It takes 5 minutes to do this test, and it tells us how much inflammation you got in your body. We get an instant result of how you're doing. And then toxicity, we need to get rid of some of the toxicity in your body. We have a couple of questionnaires. Actually, they're online on our website that you can check them out. We have a body mass index test that tells the amount of fluid in between. Remember, we talked about the innate and the adaptive. The adaptive is between the cells, and the innate or the inborn is inside the cells. Well, this BMI test tells us where your fluid compartments are. And if you have more fluid outside the cells than inside the cells, you may not be swollen, but that's where the toxins collect. And so you might need a detoxification program, an ion cleanse. We've got a 14-day detoxification program with specific nutrients, but you can start doing this all by yourself. Dr. Chip introduced this to me a while ago after he finished his college career. If all you did was 1 day a week, just fasted and only had water, you can start to detoxify your body. Now, there's several problems with that. And here's the biggest problem. Is like, okay, if you can't go a whole day without food, there's something wrong, right? Yes, you'll have some pains. Yes, you'll have a decrease in energy, but emotionally, we are addicted to food, whether the taste, whether the smell, we just love it. We're bored. We're, all kinds of stuff. So a 1 day a week fast, you can start that tomorrow. You can start it like when we're done tonight and start your 24 hours tonight.
So the next thing we're going to look at is antibacterial, antiviral nutrients, right? Another piece of the puzzle. So on the next slide, Dr. M, you'll see the target specific nutrients. So that Saranac SA, succinic acid, is what we use for that N-acetylcysteine. We have Bioprotein Plus, which also covers part of that zinc. It's part of the thymus gland, and so it helps promote that. We have our Gentium 23. We have vitamin D3. We have a new product in that I just talked to a patient this afternoon that loves it. We have zinc lozenges. We have vitamin C and selenium, right? All those specific things. And so
sorry, Dr. Chip, I hit
that's okay.
There we go.
And so those are some of the things that you can start right away if you have at home, or you can talk to us more at your next visit.
Dr. Chip, I got a question. This question is from JM from Denver. It says, Doc, I heard that hyperbaric oxygen therapy can help an infection. Is this true? And the answer is yes. Organisms like yeast, viruses, bacteria, they're anaerobic organisms, which means they live without oxygen. So they don't do very well in an oxygen-rich environment. So again, would this be the first thing I would do for a COVID-19 infected patient? And pardon me, the answer is absolutely not. Excuse me. But we have had several patients with sinus infections. They go in the hyperbaric chamber and it starts killing off these organisms. We had one patient. Pardon me. Okay, I'll come back to it, Dr. Chip.
Okay. So if you go to the next slide, we'll start talking about the epigenetics and energy medicine. So what's the next thing is going to be, one more slide, Dr. M, as you get a drink here. We have the 23andMe testing. We personally do different kinesiology testing. Dr. M's learned some great new protocols from Dr. Chris Astill-Smith in the United Kingdom. And here in July, we're going to be meeting back up with him to learn more about that as well.
Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so back to our hyperbaric question. we had a professional banjo player, and he came to us and he says, "Doc, I got to help you." He would pluck the banjo with his right hand, and his left hand would be on the fingerboard. And he said, "I have this MRSA infection on my plucking finger." And he said, "I've been going to the hospital in town, and they have given me antibiotics. They've pureed it. They've sliced and diced it. They've irrigated it. I've been on intravenous antibiotics. Nothing's worked, and now they want to amputate my finger." And I said, "Well, what do you think?" He said, "I'm a professional banjo player. They're not cutting off my finger." So what we did was we did some cold laser therapy on him, right on the finger. We gave him some I6 factor and then some of that Sera-NAC, and then we put him in the hyperbaric chamber. So we gave him a laser treatment for 20 minutes. We put him in the hyperbaric chamber for an hour. We did that for 10 days in a row, including Saturday and Sunday. And we sent him back to the hospital, which was his normal, regular scheduled time. And they asked him, I said, like, "What are you doing?" It's like, he said, "Why?" He said, "Like, this thing's almost gone. It's never been this good since we've been seeing you." And they said, "What have you been doing?" He said, "Well, I've been going to this chiropractor in Overland Park." And he said, "He's been sticking me in a hyperbaric chamber and been doing cold laser on me." And they said, "Well, we have a hyperbaric chamber here." And he says, "What?" And they literally walked 50 yards from where they had seen this man for 3 months. And they opened the door, and it's the exact same hyperbaric chamber we have. They said, "Oh, we can do the chamber here." He says, "This chamber was 50 yards away from me from 3 months, and you did all this other stuff on me and didn't even suggest that." And they said, "Well, insurance doesn't cover it. That's why we didn't suggest it." He said, "We're talking about a professional banjo player and my finger, and you didn't recommend it because insurance didn't cover it." He says, "I'm going back to the guy in Overland Park. He helped me." And it's like, so that's the short of the long story. But yes, hyperbaric oxygen and cold laser can help infections. Again, it's like you're not coming here with COVID-19 for hyperbaric chamber and oxygen. So there are some great things. So if I could do one more story, Dr. Chip. So I've always told my children, I'm a first generation immigrant to the New World, and so on Sandy, and we both come from Macedonian backgrounds. So we always told our kids, you're Macedonian, you're Macedonian, you're Macedonian. And in the Kansas City area, there's not any Macedonian here that aren't named Mladenoff. So there aren't any, right? So I know the kids trusted me. So Alexis gets engaged. Her fiance buys her the 23andMe testing. And so she gets it done. She says, "Dad, I had it done." I said, "Okay." She says, I said, "What did it come out?" She says, "Well, I think I'm Macedonian." I said, "Okay, so what's the percentage of Macedonian?" She says, "Well, I'm 99.25% Macedonian." And I said, "Do you think your brother and sister should get tested?" She said, "No, I don't think we have to." So that's a cute story. But here's the point, that 23andMe doesn't tell you all the genetic things you might be looking for. They might be able to tell you about your ancestry, but can they tell you, are you deficient in 5-methyltetrahydrofolate, which is your ability to detoxify your body and get rid of poisons from your body? That's the number one genetic deficiency of all humans of any culture, of any race. That's number one. 23andMe, at the time Alexis had it done, didn't do that. They might do it now. So that's why we've had to come up with some other procedures. And the epigenetics one that we've done, you've seen me do this on a couple of patients. It takes about a half hour. It's where I use those acetates, those colored plastic pieces of paper, and put them on the patients and test them. And that tells us about the energetics of your genetic system. So it's pretty cool and pretty exciting. Okay. Scott, do we have any other questions?
No questions right now, as far as I can see. I mean, you guys are really loading the wagon. This is really great information. I think some of the questions that one of the questions that came in earlier, your material anticipated it, so you've really covered it, and it was really about what do you guys do on a daily basis to keep your immune system strong. So I don't know that you would answer it differently than what you've covered, but that was a more directed at you personally as to what your personal protocols are.
Well, I'll ask Dr. Chip to answer that, because he has a unique perspective, because, as a young child, he didn't know anything different, and he just did what mom and dad told him to do. And he only went on antibiotics once for 7 days as a elite college athlete, because he lived in a small group, and they started getting bronchitis and then some pneumonia, and so he couldn't get away fast enough, so to speak. And now he's a physician, so let's have his perspective of what should be done every day, because he's done the whole gamut.
The biggest thing that I can tell is obviously being adjusted. As a chiropractor myself, I get adjusted at least once every 2 weeks. Of course, it's obviously when Dr. M's gone, so I have to ask a colleague. It never fails, but staying adjusted regularly is one of the biggest things. Staying hydrated, so that purposeful movement, all those detoxifying things are going to be your best bet to get you on the right foot. Decreasing cortisol and lowering your stress, right? A couple of things we just talked about already. Raising specific immune function, talking about that right there. Reduced inflammation, detoxifying, a couple of things right there. And then those specific nutrients that we talked about. And then the one thing that Dr. M was just talking about with the epigenetics is the genetic blessings.
Actually, there's one more thing if you could share, Dr. Chip. If you haven't seen Dr. Chip for a while, everybody says, "Oh man, how'd you lose all that weight and everything?" And it's like, I want you to give them a little bit of rationale. He went total dairy-free and quasi gluten-free. So give us some background on why did you go dairy-free?
So after I played a contact sport for several years, right? So a few concussions on the books, several off the books, and was having trouble sleeping, and finally got myself tested. And instead of just putting up with it, because I'm, a terrible patient, so you can yell at me when you come in next time, but I just wasn't sleeping well and got tested and showed up dairy. And so I went dairy free and, started fasting myself, started praying a little bit more. And really, once I went dairy free, I probably lost about 15 to 20 pounds without trying. So that's the biggest thing to me is let's find out what's making the issue in you, whether it be food, whether it be your environment, whatever it is. And let's move forward with that, because you'll lose the weight, you'll feel better. That patient I was talking with today with the vitamin D3, it was a specific D3 and she feels great. So hi, if you're here. But yeah, it's a different way to look at, a different prism to look through that. Hey, let's eliminate something that's causing the issue and you're going to feel better.
Okay, so Dr. Chip, let's kind of try and wind it down here. We're coming close to an hour, and everybody's been gracious hanging in there with us, and we've been kind of like blasting a bunch of stuff at them. All right, so like,
let me ask a quick question on behalf
sure.
of someone, and this one actually came in by email before we got started, and then they've popped it in here as well. Joe White was asking a question related, and you may or may not know the answer based on what you're aware of with COVID-19, but because it's pretty nuanced. Ibuprofen or acetaminophen, are there any concerns if someone were to contract COVID-19 with either of those as a painkiller, ibuprofen or acetaminophen? Have you run across that? Any concerns there?
Well, let's look at those NSAIDs, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, whether they're over-the-counter or prescribed. Okay, let's put the COVID stuff to the side first, and just anybody taking those drugs. So there were several studies that were shown, and the FDA rescinded them because of pressure from big pharma. And get those stats if you like, but basically they can cause a stroke, they can cause a heart attack, they can cause liver and kidney damage, but big pharma was able to have CDC kind of mask those and downplay those so that they could keep selling lots of the drugs. So anybody taking those is at risk of those things happening. So now I can only imagine, again, I've never treated or diagnosed anybody with COVID-19, but here's what I do know. If that interleukin-6 hormone is elevated, NSAIDs don't attack that. They don't affect that at all, right? And so are you putting them at further risk? Well, if they already have a heart problem, those people are at greater risk for COVID-19. Now you're accelerating that risk. So it's like, I would be like, if it was me or my wife or my mom or dad or even one of my kids, I'd say absolutely not, or under no circumstances, if they were infected, no matter how little or how much it was being manifested, no non-steroidals, absolutely not.
Specifically, ibuprofen is the one that will make it worse.
Yeah.
But I would say no NSAIDs as well.
All right, that's the end of the questions.
Actually, I had another question here. Somebody texted me on my phone. And they said, well, Dr. M, you and Dr. Chip do a lot of acupuncture. It's like, okay, I know it's sometimes for a specific problem, but can that help the immune system? And the answer is absolutely positively. So what we'll do is we'll put together a package of information. We'll send it off to you, but there are, and we could talk from now till tomorrow just about studies on how an adjustment lowers the immune system or raises the appropriate part, how acupuncture makes the bad guys go down and the good guys go up. So yes, absolutely, acupuncture can help. And a lot of people say, oh, I'm scared of needles, I'm scared of needles. Well, acupuncture is where you do it and not how. So sometimes we use the laser. Sometimes you see us putting those little mustard seeds on patients, because if you put a mustard seed on this spot right here, the patient can stimulate it and it'll make a headache go away. So again, it's where you do it and not how. Okay, so Dr. Chip, let's try and wrap it up here a little bit. So let's circle the wagons here. So what's the first thing, our first big thing to start to repair and nourish your immune system?
Get adjusted regularly. If it's once a week, once every other week like me, once a month, we just want to make sure that we are helping your immune system where you need it.
All right,
What's
the second thing is decrease your cortisol, lower your stress, right? Part of that is, how you think. How did you come into existence? And I want to speak etherically here for a second, and that is, this goes back to goal setting, is like, how did God create the universe out of chaos and out of nothing? The first words of the Bible are, and God said. And it doesn't matter what comes after that. It's like, that just captivates me. He created everything in existence by the words that came out of his mouth. So I'm imploring you, choose your words carefully about what you want to create in life or what you don't want to destroy. So that'll all lower your stress system.
Third thing is raise specific immune functions, and that's with getting adjusted, specific nutrients, doing the right thing. And then for each individual person, it's going to be different, but we're going to make sure we help you in the best way we can.
Okay, so next we want to decrease inflammation. We want to detoxify. Several different ways you can do that. Easiest thing is start just going to fast 1 day a week. Okay. Now, obviously, if you have a heart problem, if you have, diabetes, medical conditions, you need to make sure you get with your primary care doc or come in and see us so that we can coach you through this. Don't be foolish about this and just charge off and start doing weird stuff. But it should not be difficult to start doing some of these things. And again, we've got that Take Aim at Your Health anti-inflammatory manual that we'd be happy to give you a copy as our gift.
We're going to use antibacterial and antiviral phytonutrients. So that's some of the Serenac, the selenium, the zinc, all that we just talked about just a couple minutes ago.
All right, then the sixth thing is our genetic system. And I like to think of this as genetic blessings. And we're going to send you some information about this concept, the term epigenetics by Dr. Bruce Lipton. He literally created a science out of thin air. He did stem cell research in the 1960s. So this is a hardcore researcher that came up with, wait a minute, just because your mom had it, your grandmom and your great-grandma had it, doesn't mean you're going to get it. And so we're going to introduce you to some of those concepts. And then if you'd like to get tested, there's a couple of different ways that we can do that. All right. So now, again, we sent a lot of information your way tonight. Thank you for hanging in there with us. All the references we've talked about, if you just type the word Fix Immune, all one word, to 555-888, we'll be sending you some links. The first one, if you did it right at the start of the webinar, you probably got the first text now that says, okay, here's the link to the CDC and White House stats. And so you'll get maybe a couple tonight, and then over the next couple of days, you'll start getting a few more.
So we looked at how do we repair our immune system. We're going to decrease that cortisol and lower our stress, raise our Th1, Th2 immune function, reduce inflammatory and inflammation and detoxify, use antibacterial, antiviral phytonutrients, the epigenetics, and first and foremost, we're going to restore that neurologic command.
All right, so now if you've been going down the rabbit hole with all the information that's been just heaped on us and heaped on us and heaped on us, okay, we've got some recommendations of how you can just kind of like tone that down a little bit. You can still go down the rabbit hole, still get some of the stats, okay, but do it prudently. Again, we're sending you some links. So Dr. Chip, how can they start doing some things to, like, okay, just not keep their head on and not have the queen keep cutting it off on them?
So here's going to be 7 tips of staying resilient amongst any virus, but specifically this COVID-19. It's going to be limit that time on social media or the news, reduce overall consumption of media. If needed information, you can come to us. We have a couple of sources, the sources we're going to send you from the White House and the CDC, where you're going to focus on what you can control, your thoughts, your actions. You're going to prioritize self-care. That's the biggest thing. Find ways to remain connected, whether it be phone. Thank you for coming tonight via video chat. And then brainstorm and set activity goals with your family. Now that you're spending a little bit more time with them, do some fun. Me and my wife have seen a lot more kids outside as we're walking our dogs. And it's nice to see kids outside playing again in the dirt, which is also going to help their immune system. So don't just stay cooped up at home, kind of sitting away from each other. Reconnect and take that time to reconnect, or maybe call a friend that may be alone. That's going to be the biggest thing, is reconnect with your family, friends, and have some fun.
Okay, so I've been on this kick about Alice in Wonderland, and so this is another one of those quotes for Alice in Wonderland. One side will make you grow taller, and the other side will make you grow shorter. And so the concept of this is like, accept advice from unexpected places. In fact, that's how, those of you that are online that are patients of Dr. Diana's or patients of ours here in our Kansas City clinic, that's how you probably found out about us. Somebody totally unexpected heard you complaining about your headache or your knee pain or your child had a concussion, and you said to them, or they said to you, maybe you want to go see this Mladenoff clinic. So unexpected places will give you advice that you won't believe that you should listen to. So now again, the Queen says, now, faster, faster. It takes all the running you can do to keep in the same place. If you want to get somewhere else, you must run at least twice as fast as that. Okay, so you're going twice as fast to stay in the same place and still get nothing done. So stay focused on your goals, on your personal health goals, on your family goals, do you have social goals? Okay, so we got a couple of friends we like hanging out with. So we go out to dinner or lunch once a month, right? And no matter what. Now, some months, it doesn't happen, but we make it a point to do those kind of things. So whatever your goals are, you need to keep your eye on the prize. All right, so then Alice also said that, there's no use in trying. You can't believe impossible things. And the Queen says, I dare say you haven't had much practice. When I was your age, I always did it for half an hour a day. While sometimes I even believed as many as 6 impossible things before breakfast. Well, guess what? Believing in the impossible is reality. And so what you can believe, conceive, you will achieve. And so I want you to think about the impossible things. Well, what's the first impossible thing that comes to my mind? That everybody who's been affected with this virus in America gets better somehow, some way. They're going to get the help they need. And our country is going to get back to the way we were, 6 months ago, 2 months ago, and we're going to be a better place. And it's not impossible. It's totally possible. Together, we can make this happen. All right, I'm going to leave you with one last image, and that is, a child's story called Pinocchio. And this picture, we're all familiar with Pinocchio, but there's some overlying things here, and I'm going to send you a reference on this by a psychologist. But this is a Geppetto who spent his life as an artist, and he carved this puppet. And it was made of wood and it had strings. And he had this impossible dream that, wouldn't it be wonderful if this puppet could become human? And in this picture, you see him on his hands and knees looking up to a star in the heavens. And there's 3 important things here. And that is, number 1, he's on his hands and knees. Number 2, he's looking up to a higher source for inspiration of making the impossible possible. And what happens? Lo and behold, his wooden puppet becomes human. Now, a whole bunch of other stuff happens after that, and that's another story. But the point is, okay, the impossible is possible. You can make it happen, and we can make it happen. All right, so Dr. Chip, anything else you want to wrap up with?
I think that's it for tonight. Just want to thank everybody for stopping by. If you have any questions, you can call us. Of course, Sandy's going to ask you if you have a fever, coughing, or anything like that. But you can always call and ask questions, and we'll get back to you as quick as we can.
Also, again, text Fix Immune to 555-888. And then, if you need some nutrients, call Dr. Diana, call Sandy. We're shipping out stuff all day. If you feel that you shouldn't go out, that's fine, but we can still get you the nutrients you want. And then there's a couple of tests that we talked about, your immune system. We didn't even talk about that. We talked about your stress system and inflammation. If you want to get those checked, it'd be our gift to you. Now, I'm going to send you a link to a video that talks about a new test that we just literally got last week about how you can have your immune system evaluated. It's a 5-minute biological medical test where you put your hand on this big blue mouse and you just hold it there for 5 minutes, and it's going to give us some information. Are you toxic? It'll tell us about your emotions. It'll tell us about, are you nutrient deficient? So again, we'd like to offer you that immune test on the house as our gift to you to help you find out where you're at. We're going to send you a link on that so that you can come in and get that done. So again, if you need anything, just holler. If you can check out our Facebook page too, because we're going to be posting things on the Facebook. But again, if you've logged on to this 555-888 messaging, we'll be sending you links for everything.
Yes. Thank you all for attending. We will be following up with an email since you registered and attended with compiling some of the information that Dr. M has to share as well. So be on the lookout in your inbox in the next day or so, probably tomorrow. And you'll be able to see that. Of course, Docs, you've got some comments there in the chat. Feel free, if you guys would like to thank, if any of you who are attending would like to thank Dr. M and Dr. Chip, please just drop that in the chat box and give them some words on the way out. Again,
actually, Scott, I got a question.
Very great information. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So are they going to be able to, watch this later on, send it to their friends to watch it?
Thank you. Thank you for the reminder. We will post this to the Facebook page, your Facebook page, and there will be an email sent out with a link to that. It'll also show up on your YouTube channel. There'll be a link to that as well. And so those are both, whether you prefer one or the other, folks, you can share really either one. If you like to be on Facebook and share there, if you're on YouTube, share there. Most of the time, the sharing and commenting and tagging happens on Facebook, but it'll be in both places. So we'll make sure they get links to that.
All righty. Well, thank you, everybody, for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you real soon.
Thank you, guys.
All right. Thank you, guys. Got some comments coming in. All right. Fantastic. All right. Glad everybody got some great takeaways. And Christy said, thank you so much. I look forward to visiting your office to have the immune test and getting adjusted. All right. Fantastic. Okay, we're going to end the recording. Everybody have a good night.